I think, therefore I am. René Descartes. This singular declaration, perhaps the most famous philosophical statement in Western thought, serves as the bedrock of rationalism and a cornerstone for understanding the nature of existence itself. Attributed to the French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist René Descartes, this concise phrase, originally rendered in Latin as cogito ergo sum, emerged from his profound quest for certainty in an age of upheaval and doubt. Descartes, living during the 17th century, found himself in a world where old certainties were crumbling and traditional authorities were being challenged by new scientific discoveries and philosophical inquiries. He embarked on a radical doubt, a method of systematically questioning everything he thought he knew. He asked himself, could he doubt the evidence of his senses? Could he doubt the existence of the external world? Could he even doubt the fundamental truths of mathematics? His rigorous process led him to a startling conclusion. While he could doubt almost everything, the very act of doubting, of thinking, was an undeniable proof of his own existence. The context for this profound realization lies in Descartes' seminal work, Meditations on First Philosophy. In his quest for an indubitable foundation upon which to build all knowledge, he employed a method of hyperbolic doubt. He imagined an evil demon, a deceiver of utmost power and cunning, who might be systematically tricking him into believing false propositions. This demon could make him believe that the sky is blue when it is not, that 2 + 2 = 5, or that he possesses a body when he does not. In this scenario, any external perception, any sensory input, any abstract logical deduction could potentially be a fabrication. Yet, even under the extreme hypothesis that a malevolent entity is constantly deceiving him, there must be a him for the deception to occur. The very act of being deceived requires a deceiver, and the act of doubting requires a doubter. Therefore, the thought, the consciousness of his own thinking, was the one thing that could not be doubted. This thought process was the undeniable evidence of his own existence as a thinking entity. This realization shifted the locus of certainty from the external world and sensory experience to the internal world of consciousness. It established the thinking thing, the mind, the soul, the consciousness as the primary indubitable reality. From this foundational certainty, Descartes sought to rebuild his knowledge of the external world, God, and the human body. He reasoned that because God is perfect and good, he would not deceive humans about the existence of the external world or the validity of clear and distinct ideas such as those found in mathematics or logic. Thus, his existence as a thinking being, his res cogitans, thinking substance, became the absolute starting point. The implications of cogito ergo sum are vast. It places a profound emphasis on the individual's subjective experience and rational thought as the primary means of acquiring knowledge. It's a powerful statement against blind faith or uncritical acceptance of tradition. However, it also opens up the mind-body dualism problem. If the mind, thinking substance, is distinct from the body, extended substance, how do they interact? This question has been a source of debate for centuries. For our contemplation tonight, consider this. In the silence of your own mind, when you reflect on your thoughts, your doubts, your awareness, What is the absolute certainty you can derive from that internal experience? Does the mere fact that you are contemplating this question confirm your own existence, not just as a physical being, but as a conscious, thinking entity? The echoes of Descartes' single powerful statement resonate through the ages, inviting us to question and to affirm our own presence in the vast theater of existence. The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates. This powerful assertion, attributed to the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, as recounted by his student Plato, encapsulates a profound perspective on human existence, purpose, and the pursuit of wisdom. Socrates, a pivotal figure in the development of Western philosophy, lived in Athens during the 5th century BCE. Unlike many philosophers before him who focused on cosmology or metaphysics, Socrates turned his attention inward, towards the human soul, ethics, and the nature of knowledge itself. He famously proclaimed his own ignorance, stating, "I know that I know nothing," a position that ironically led him to seek deeper understanding through rigorous questioning. His method, now known as the Socratic method, involved engaging in dialogues, probing assumptions, exposing contradictions, and guiding individuals towards clearer insights through a series of questions. It was this relentless pursuit of self-knowledge and understanding of virtue that formed the core of his philosophical life. The statement, "The unexamined life is not worth living," is more than just a catchy phrase. It is a call to conscious living. Socrates believed that human beings are endowed with the capacity for reason and self-reflection, and that to live without utilizing this capacity is to exist in a state of intellectual and moral dormancy. To live an examined life means to actively question one's beliefs, values, actions, and motivations. It means to engage in introspection, to understand the principles that guide one's behavior, and to critically assess whether those principles lead to a good and virtuous life. Without this process of examination, Socrates argued, individuals are merely drifting through existence, guided by unthinking habits, societal norms, or the opinions of others, rather than by reasoned understanding and personal conviction. Such a life, devoid of critical self-awareness, he considered fundamentally unfulfilling and indeed not truly worthy of a human being. Plato's Apology, a philosophical defense of Socrates' life and teachings, vividly portrays Socrates confronting his accusers and defending his lifelong philosophical mission. He describes himself as a gadfly, a stinging insect that provokes the lazy and complacent into thought and action. His examination of others, and indeed of himself, was not an academic exercise, but a vital civic and ethical duty, aimed at the moral improvement of both the individual and the city-state. His persistent questioning often unsettled those in power and those who held conventional beliefs, leading to his eventual trial and condemnation to death. Yet, even in the face of his execution, Socrates remained steadfast in his commitment to his principles, accepting his fate rather than abandoning his philosophical pursuit.
For our contemplation this evening, consider the implications of Socrates' famous words. In the quiet of this moment, what aspects of your own life might benefit from deeper examination? Are there beliefs you hold that have never been truly challenged? Are your actions aligned with your deepest values, or are they simply the result of habit and routine? To live an examined life is not about constant self-criticism or the pursuit of unattainable perfection, but about a continuous, honest engagement with oneself and the world. It is an invitation to awaken from passive existence and to actively participate in shaping the meaning and quality of one's own life. What is the first question you would ask yourself if you were to begin examining your life today?
Know thyself. Oracle of Delphi, attributed to many philosophers. This ancient adage, often inscribed at the temple of Apollo at Delphi, stands as one of the most fundamental and enduring pieces of advice in the history of philosophy. While famously associated with the Oracle of Delphi, the maxim was embraced and expounded upon by numerous Greek thinkers, most notably Socrates. It represents a profound philosophical imperative, directing human inquiry not towards the external cosmos or abstract metaphysical systems, but towards the most immediate and yet most elusive subject, oneself. To know thyself is to undertake a deep and often challenging journey of introspection, self-awareness, and self-understanding. It is a lifelong process of examining one's own thoughts, emotions, motivations, strengths, weaknesses, values, and beliefs. This introspection is not merely an academic exercise, but a practical guide to living a more authentic, ethical, and fulfilling life. The significance of this maxim lies in its foundational role for all other forms of knowledge and ethical action. Socrates, for instance, believed that true wisdom began with recognizing the limits of one's own knowledge, and that self-knowledge was the prerequisite for understanding virtue and living a good life. If one does not understand their own desires, their own biases, their own capacity for both good and evil, how can they possibly navigate the complexities of human relationships, moral choices, or societal responsibilities? Self-knowledge is the compass that allows us to steer our lives with intention, rather than being driven by external forces or internal unexamined impulses. It involves understanding what truly motivates us, what our core values are, and how our actions are perceived by others. This awareness helps in making conscious choices that align with our deepest selves, leading to greater personal integrity and a more coherent sense of identity. The challenge of knowing thyself is immense, because the self is not a static object to be simply discovered, but a dynamic and often contradictory entity. It involves confronting uncomfortable truths about our own limitations, our flaws, and our potential for harm, as well as recognizing our strengths and capacity for growth.
It requires an honest appraisal of our past experiences, how they have shaped us, and how we can move forward with greater awareness. Philosophers from various traditions have explored different facets of self-knowledge. Eastern philosophies, for example, often emphasize the transcendence of the ego or the illusion of a separate self, pointing towards a more interconnected or universal consciousness. In the West, existentialists emphasize the freedom and responsibility of creating one's own essence through choices and actions, a process intrinsically tied to self-understanding. For our contemplation, consider the practical application of this ancient advice. In your daily life, how often do you pause to genuinely inquire about your own state of being? What are the underlying reasons for your current mood, your recent decisions, or your persistent habits? Is it truly you that is choosing, or is it a series of automatic responses shaped by past experiences, societal conditioning, or immediate desires? The journey of self-knowledge is not a destination, but a continuous practice. It is in the daily act of looking inward, of asking the difficult questions, and of striving for authentic self-understanding that we begin to truly live lives that are examined, purposeful, and, in Socrates' estimation, truly worth living. What aspect of yourself are you most curious to explore and understand more deeply tonight?
The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Socrates. This paradoxical statement, famously attributed to Socrates, is not an endorsement of ignorance, but a profound declaration about the nature of true wisdom and the limits of human knowledge. Socrates, through his relentless questioning and examination of widely held beliefs, discovered that many people who claimed to be wise were, in fact, ignorant of their own ignorance. They held strong opinions and made confident assertions, but when pressed, their understanding was often superficial, inconsistent, or based on unexamined assumptions. Socrates, in contrast, embraced his lack of definitive knowledge as a starting point for genuine inquiry. His famous assertion signifies that wisdom lies not in accumulating a vast reservoir of facts or possessing absolute certainty, but in recognizing the vastness of what is unknown and maintaining an open, inquisitive mind. The essence of this Socratic paradox lies in the intellectual humility it promotes. True wisdom, as Socrates envisioned it, begins with an awareness of our own cognitive limitations. The moment we believe we know everything, or that our understanding is complete, we close ourselves off to further learning and discovery. We become dogmatic, resistant to new ideas, and perhaps even fall prey to the very ignorance we fail to recognize. By acknowledging our ignorance, we cultivate a state of perpetual curiosity and a drive to seek deeper understanding. This leads to a more rigorous approach to knowledge, one that is constantly questioning, testing, and refining its own beliefs rather than clinging to them with uncritical certainty. It is the intellectual humility that fuels the Socratic method itself, a constant process of inquiry born from the recognition that there is always more to learn. This philosophical stance has significant implications for how we approach learning, problem-solving, and even interpersonal relationships. In a world inundated with information and competing ideologies, the ability to approach subjects with an open mind, to listen critically to different perspectives, and to acknowledge the complexity of issues is paramount. If we approach a discussion believing we already possess all the answers, we hinder the possibility of dialogue and mutual understanding. Conversely, by admitting that we don't know or that our understanding is incomplete, we create an environment where genuine learning and collaboration can flourish. This is not to say that one should abandon conviction or the pursuit of knowledge. Rather, it is about cultivating a critical awareness of the tentative nature of much of our knowledge, and being willing to revise our views in light of new evidence or better arguments. The pursuit of wisdom, therefore, becomes less about arriving at a final, definitive answer, and more about the ongoing process of seeking, questioning, and learning. It is a journey rather than a destination. The wisest among us are often those who are most aware of the vast ocean of the unknown and who navigate it with humility, curiosity, and a willingness to be proven wrong. For our reflection tonight, consider the areas of your own life where you might hold strong beliefs or opinions. How often do you question the foundations of those beliefs? What would it mean for you to embrace the possibility that you might not know as much as you think you do in certain areas? The path to wisdom, as Socrates suggested, begins with the honest acknowledgement of our own unknowing.
Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Albert Einstein. This provocative statement, often attributed to the brilliant physicist Albert Einstein, touches upon profound philosophical and scientific inquiries into the very nature of what we perceive as reality. While Einstein was first and foremost a scientist who sought to understand the objective laws governing the universe, his insights into space, time, and perception led him to question the common-sense notion of an absolute, independent reality accessible to us directly. The illusion he refers to is not necessarily a denial of existence, but rather an acknowledgement that our perception of reality is filtered, interpreted, and constructed by our senses, our minds, and the very structure of the universe itself, which can behave in ways that defy our intuitive understanding. Einstein's theories of relativity fundamentally altered our understanding of space and time, revealing them not as fixed, absolute backdrops, but as dynamic, interwoven aspects of space-time that can be influenced by gravity and motion. For instance, the concept of time dilation means that time can pass at different rates for different observers depending on their relative speeds or gravitational environments. This implies that there isn't a single, universal now that applies to everyone simultaneously. Similarly, his work on the photoelectric effect and the wave-particle duality of light hinted at a quantum realm where particles can exist in multiple states or locations at once until observed, challenging our classical, deterministic view of the universe. If space and time are not absolute, and if the behavior of the universe at its most fundamental levels is probabilistic and observer-dependent, then our everyday perception of a solid, predictable, and objectively graspable reality can indeed be seen as a construct, an emergent property that is incredibly consistent for our scale of experience. The persistence of this illusion is crucial. For all practical purposes, our everyday reality is remarkably stable and predictable. The chair we sit on appears solid. Gravity consistently pulls us down, and the passage of time feels linear and unwavering. This consistency is what allows us to navigate the world, build societies, and conduct scientific experiments. However, physics suggests that this experienced reality is a macroscopic approximation of a much stranger, more fluid underlying truth. It's like looking at a vast ocean from a high cliff. You see a seemingly flat, continuous surface. But up close, the ocean is composed of countless individual waves, currents, and molecules, each with its own complex behavior. Our perception of reality is our way of making sense of this vast, often counterintuitive underlying structure. This idea also resonates with philosophical discussions about idealism versus realism and the role of consciousness in shaping our perception. While Einstein's statement is rooted in physics, it invites us to consider how our own consciousness and our sensory apparatus might be integral to the illusion of reality. For our contemplation tonight, consider the nature of your own perceived reality. How much of what you experience is a direct apprehension of the world, and how much is your mind's interpretation, prediction, and filtering of sensory data? Are the laws of physics truly describing reality as it is, or as it appears to us? The persistence of our shared experience of reality makes it feel undeniably real. Yet Einstein's words remind us that what we perceive might be a simplified, albeit reliable, manifestation of something far more complex and perhaps fundamentally different.
The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. Socrates. This maxim, again echoing the practical approach to philosophy championed by Socrates, highlights the critical importance of clarity in thought and communication. For Socrates, genuine understanding, and therefore wisdom, could not be achieved if the fundamental concepts being discussed were vague, ambiguous, or poorly understood. Before one can engage in meaningful debate, solve complex problems, or even live a virtuous life, it is essential to establish a common and precise understanding of the terms involved. This is not merely an academic pedantry. It is the very foundation upon which rational discourse and sound judgment are built. Without clear definitions, conversations can devolve into misunderstandings, arguments can be based on flawed premises, and decisions can be made on shaky ground. Socrates' method, as depicted in Plato's dialogues, often revolved around asking his interlocutors to define abstract concepts like justice,
courage, piety, or beauty. He would then meticulously examine their definitions, revealing inconsistencies, hidden assumptions, or oversimplifications. For example, when someone would claim to know what justice is, Socrates would ask them to provide a clear definition, and through a series of probing questions, he would demonstrate that their understanding was inadequate or contradictory. This process was not about making people feel foolish, though it often had that effect, but about guiding them towards a more rigorous and accurate grasp of the concepts that underpin their moral and ethical lives. He believed that to act virtuously, one must first understand what virtue is. Vague notions of justice or courage could lead to unjust or cowardly actions disguised as the real thing. The relevance of this Socratic principle extends far beyond ancient Athens. In any field of inquiry, from science and mathematics to law, politics, and even everyday conversation, ambiguity in language can lead to significant problems. Consider the term freedom. Does it mean freedom from external constraint? Freedom to pursue one's desires? Freedom from want? Or freedom from the tyranny of one's own passions? Depending on how freedom is defined, political ideologies, personal choices, and societal policies can diverge dramatically. Similarly, in science, precise definitions of terms like energy, mass, or consciousness are vital for reproducible experiments and coherent theories. In personal relationships, misunderstandings often arise not from malice, but from differing interpretations of words like love, commitment, or respect. The act of defining terms is an act of clarification, of bringing order to the potential chaos of thought and language. It requires careful reflection, consideration of context, and a willingness to engage with complexity. It is a process that necessitates not only intellectual rigor, but also intellectual honesty. We must be willing to acknowledge when our own understanding of a term is insufficient and be open to refining our definitions as we learn more. For our contemplation this evening, consider a concept that is important to you, perhaps related to your work, your relationships, or your personal values. Take a moment to try to define it precisely, as if you were explaining it to someone who had never encountered it before. What are the essential components of its meaning? What are the potential ambiguities that need to be clarified? By engaging in this practice, we begin to lay the groundwork for clearer thought, more effective communication, and ultimately, a more profound understanding of the world and our place within it.
Everything is permitted, as long as it is done with love. A more modern interpretation from various sources. This phrase, often associated with the existentialist concept of radical freedom and responsibility, suggests a powerful guiding principle for navigating the complexities of life and morality. While it doesn't directly stem from a single ancient philosopher in this exact wording, its spirit resonates with many ethical frameworks that place a high value on intention and compassion. The idea that everything is permitted speaks to a liberation from rigid, external moral codes or dogmas. It implies that in the absence of absolute, universally dictated laws, the individual is free to determine their actions. However, this freedom is not a license for nihilistic or chaotic behavior. The crucial qualifier, as long as it is done with love, introduces a profound ethical constraint, redirecting the exercise of freedom towards compassion, empathy, and the well-being of others. The concept of everything is permitted echoes the existentialist notion that existence precedes essence. For thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, humans are born without a predetermined purpose or nature. We are condemned to be free, meaning we are entirely responsible for creating our own values and defining our own essence through our choices and actions. In this view, traditional moral systems might be seen as external impositions that can stifle individual freedom and authentic self-creation. However, Sartre also stressed that this freedom comes with immense responsibility. When we choose, we are not only choosing for ourselves, but also implicitly making a statement about what we believe humanity ought to be. The love in this context can be understood as a form of universal compassion, a recognition of the shared humanity and inherent dignity of all beings, which guides our choices towards constructive and benevolent actions. The qualifier, done with love, acts as an ethical compass, transforming a potentially amoral statement into one deeply rooted in compassion and connection. Love, in this sense, is not merely romantic affection, but a broader ethical stance, a profound concern for the welfare of oneself and others, a desire to alleviate suffering, and a commitment to fostering growth and well-being. If one were truly acting from a place of deep, unconditional love, then actions that cause harm, exploit, or disregard the dignity of others would naturally fall outside the realm of what is permitted. This principle encourages us to consider the impact of our actions, not just on ourselves, but on the intricate web of relationships and the wider world. It suggests that the motive behind an action is as important, if not more important, than the action itself. For our contemplation, consider how this principle might apply to your own life. Are there situations where you feel bound by rules or expectations that seem to conflict with your inner sense of what is right or compassionate? What would it mean to approach all your actions from the mundane to the significant with an intention rooted in genuine love or compassion? This is not an invitation to disregard all boundaries, but an encouragement to infuse our choices with a mindful awareness of our interconnectedness and a commitment to acts that nurture rather than harm. It prompts us to ask, what action, guided by genuine love for myself and for others, is permitted in this moment? It's a challenging, yet potentially liberating framework for ethical decision-making, emphasizing intention as the ultimate arbiter.
We are what we repeatedly do.
Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Will Durant, quoting Aristotle. This profound observation, famously articulated by the historian Will Durant as a summation of Aristotle's ethical philosophy, gets to the heart of character formation and the cultivation of virtue. It suggests that our identity, our very being, is not a fixed entity, but a cumulative result of our consistent actions. Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, believed that virtue was not something one was born with, nor was it a purely intellectual understanding. Instead, he argued that virtue is a disposition, a habit of behaving in certain ways, developed through practice. We become just by doing just acts, courageous by doing courageous acts, and temperate by doing temperate acts. Consequently, excellence or virtue is not an isolated incident or a sudden burst of effort, but the ingrained pattern of our behavior. The core idea here is that our actions, repeated over time, shape our character and ultimately define who we are. If we repeatedly choose to be kind, our character develops a disposition towards kindness. If we habitually procrastinate, our character becomes one of procrastination. This is a powerful and perhaps daunting concept because it places the responsibility for our character squarely on our shoulders, not as a matter of innate talent or luck, but as a product of our consistent choices and behaviors. It means that the small, seemingly insignificant actions we perform daily are not isolated events, but are, in fact, the building blocks of our identity. The habits we form, whether they are habits of diligence, of kindness, of critical thinking, or of self-discipline, become the very fabric of our being. The distinction between an act and a habit is critical. An act might be a singular moment of courage, a one-time act of generosity, or a solitary instance of diligent work. These are commendable, but they do not by themselves define a person's character. A habit, on the other hand, is a repeated, often unconscious pattern of behavior. Excellence, therefore, is not achieved by performing one outstanding deed, but by consistently engaging in practices that lead to outstanding results. It's the athlete who trains diligently every day, the scholar who studies consistently, or the artist who practices their craft diligently, not in sporadic bursts, but as a way of life. This perspective shifts the focus from grand gestures to the consistent cultivation of beneficial practices. This Aristotelian view offers a practical framework for self-improvement. If we want to be excellent, we must identify the habits that lead to excellence in our chosen fields or in our personal lives, and then commit to practicing those habits consistently. It also implies that changing our character is possible, not by a single grand decision, but through the gradual, deliberate cultivation of new habits and the unlearning of old ones.
It's about being mindful of our daily actions and recognizing their cumulative power. For our contemplation tonight, reflect on the habits you have cultivated. What are the repeated actions that form the foundation of your character? Are they habits that lead towards the kind of excellence, in whatever form you define it, that you aspire to? The power to shape your character lies not in sporadic acts of will, but in the persistent, daily practice of what truly matters.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. Peter Drucker. This insightful quote, often attributed to the influential management consultant Peter Drucker, shifts the focus from passive observation and prediction to active creation and intentionality. It's a powerful statement that underscores the human capacity for agency, and the idea that our future is not a predetermined destiny unfolding before us, but rather a landscape that we actively shape through our choices, actions, and innovations. In a world often focused on forecasting trends or passively reacting to circumstances, Drucker's assertion encourages a proactive approach, suggesting that the most reliable way to know what the future holds is to be the architect of it. The essence of this idea lies in the power of human intention and action. Instead of trying to guess what might happen, we can influence outcomes by setting goals, developing strategies, and then diligently working to bring those visions into reality. This is not about magical thinking, but about recognizing the cause and effect relationships that drive progress. For example, if one wants to predict a successful career in a particular field, the most effective prediction is to acquire the necessary skills, network with professionals, and consistently strive for excellence in that domain. By actively building the future one desires, they are, in essence, predicting its outcome through their own deliberate efforts. This applies to individuals, organizations, and even societies. Drucker, known for his work in management and business strategy, applied this principle to organizational innovation. He argued that companies should not simply adapt to market changes, but should actively drive them. By anticipating future needs, developing new products, and pioneering new approaches, businesses can create the market conditions they desire, thereby making their own future more predictable and successful. This involves a mindset of innovation, a willingness to take calculated risks, and a commitment to continuous learning and adaptation. It's about being a force for change rather than a passive recipient of it. For our contemplation, consider this principle in the context of your own life. How much of your future are you currently trying to predict? And how much are you actively creating? Are you waiting for opportunities to arise, or are you actively seeking to manifest the opportunities you envision? This philosophy encourages us to take ownership of our trajectory. It asks us to consider our aspirations not as distant possibilities to be hoped for, but as projects to be undertaken. What are the futures you wish to see for yourself, your loved ones, or your community? What concrete steps can you begin taking today, or habitually take moving forward, to bring those futures into being? The power to predict what will come often resides in the courage and commitment to actively build it, step by deliberate step.
Man is a wolf to man. Homo homini lupus. Thomas Hobbes. This stark and often unsettling observation comes from the 17th century English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, most famously articulated in his seminal work, Leviathan. Hobbes used this Latin phrase to describe his view of the state of nature, a hypothetical condition of humanity prior to the establishment of organized society and government. According to Hobbes, in this natural state, without any governing authority to enforce laws or maintain order, human life would be a brutal, solitary, and short existence. He believed that humans are fundamentally driven by self-interest, a desire for power, and a perpetual fear of death. In the absence of a sovereign power to restrain these natural inclinations, individuals would constantly be in competition and conflict with one another, leading to a war of all against all. Hobbes' philosophy emerged during a period of immense political turmoil in England, including the English Civil War, which deeply influenced his pessimistic outlook on human nature. He saw society as a necessary construct, a social contract, where individuals voluntarily surrender some of their absolute freedom and natural rights to a sovereign authority, be it a monarch or a ruling body, in exchange for security, order, and protection from the inherent chaos of the state of nature. The wolf to man metaphor vividly illustrates this brutal competition. Just as a wolf is a predator to other wolves in a struggle for resources, Hobbes suggested that humans in their natural state are predators to each other, driven by an insatiable desire for gain and a fear of others' power. In this war of all against all, there would be no industry, no agriculture, no arts, no sciences, and most tragically, no society. Life would be characterized by constant fear and the danger of violent death. Hobbes believed that this grim reality was the natural condition of humanity if left unchecked. Therefore, the establishment of a powerful, absolute sovereign was essential to curb these destructive impulses and create a stable civil society. The sovereign's power was to be unquestioned, its authority absolute, because any division of power or challenge to the sovereign would risk a return to the chaotic state of nature. The Leviathan, the all-encompassing state, was to be a formidable entity capable of enforcing peace and order, even if it meant limiting individual liberties. For our contemplation, consider the implications of Hobbes' view on human nature.
While it presents a rather bleak picture, it also offers a rationale for the existence and importance of laws, governments, and social order. To what extent do we observe the wolf-to-man tendency in human behavior today, even within organized societies? Are competitive instincts, self-interest, and the pursuit of power always destructive, or can they be channeled constructively by social structures? Does the existence of laws and moral codes fundamentally alter our natural state, or are these just societal impositions on our inherent nature? Hobbes' stark vision serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between individual freedom and collective security, and the constant, often unexamined, role that societal structures play in shaping our interactions and our very perception of each other.
It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot have both. Niccolò Machiavelli. This infamous piece of advice comes from Niccolò Machiavelli's Renaissance masterpiece, The Prince, a treatise on political power and leadership written in the early 16th century. Machiavelli, a Florentine diplomat and political theorist, offered pragmatic and often cynical advice to rulers on how to acquire and maintain power in a turbulent Italian political landscape. His approach was groundbreaking because he detached political advice from traditional Christian morality and focused instead on what he observed to be the practical realities of rulership, regardless of ethical considerations. This particular maxim suggests a strategic preference for a leader to be feared rather than loved, assuming that a ruler cannot inspire both sentiments simultaneously. Machiavelli's reasoning behind this controversial statement is rooted in his belief about human nature and political stability. He argued that while being loved is desirable, love is a fickle emotion that can be easily broken by self-interest or external pressures. People are less likely to betray someone they love, but they are more likely to do so if they fear them. Fear, on the other hand, is a more reliable motivator. The fear of punishment, the fear of reprisal, and the fear of a ruler's power can serve as a constant deterrent against disloyalty and rebellion. Therefore, if a prince is forced to choose between being loved and being feared, Machiavelli advises choosing fear, as it provides a more consistent and dependable foundation for maintaining authority and order. However, it's crucial to understand Machiavelli's nuance. He did not advocate for gratuitous cruelty or for being hated, which he believed could lead to instability and overthrow. He advised that a prince should be feared in a way that avoids hatred. This means avoiding the confiscation of property, respecting the honor of citizens, and not being excessively cruel. The fear he recommended was a healthy respect for the ruler's power and a clear understanding of the consequences of disobedience, rather than terror that breeds contempt. The goal was to inspire obedience and prevent sedition, not to create an environment of constant terror that could backfire.
The enduring impact of this statement lies in its frank assessment of the darker aspects of human psychology and power dynamics. It challenges the idealized notion of benevolent leadership and forces us to consider the practical necessities of maintaining control in complex and often untrustworthy environments. For our contemplation, consider how this principle might manifest in different forms of leadership, from politics to business or even personal relationships. Is there a context where instilling a healthy fear, or at least a strong respect for consequences, is more effective than seeking popular affection? Conversely, what are the long-term costs of a leadership style based primarily on fear, and how does it differ from inspiring respect? Machiavelli's pragmatic, albeit unromantic perspective invites us to ponder the difficult choices that power often demands, and the trade-offs between love and fear in human affairs.
The greatest good is the highest pleasure. Epicureanism. Epicurus. This statement encapsulates the core of Epicurean philosophy, a school of thought founded by the Greek philosopher Epicurus in the 4th century BCE. Far from advocating for hedonistic indulgence or unrestrained sensual pleasure, Epicurus proposed a nuanced and often misunderstood view of pleasure as the ultimate good and the guiding principle for a happy life. For Epicurus, pleasure was not defined by fleeting, intense sensory gratification, which he believed often led to pain or dissatisfaction in the long run. Instead, the highest form of pleasure, or ataraxia, tranquility or freedom from disturbance, was the absence of pain in the body and trouble in the mind. This state of serene contentment was the ultimate goal, and all virtuous actions were to be pursued if they led to this lasting, calm pleasure. Epicurus distinguished between different types of pleasures and pains. He categorized desires into 3 types: natural and necessary, like food, water, shelter; natural but unnecessary, like gourmet food, luxurious living; and unnatural and unnecessary, like fame, power, excessive wealth. He argued that the highest good, pleasure, was achieved by satisfying the natural and necessary desires in a simple, moderate way, and by avoiding those desires that lead to pain, anxiety, or dependence. Therefore, true Epicureanism was not about lavish parties or constant revelry, but about a life of moderation, simple pleasures, intellectual pursuits, and friendship, all contributing to a state of enduring peace and contentment. The absence of pain, both physical and mental, was the paramount pleasure. The philosophical underpinnings of this idea are significant. Epicurus was a materialist, believing that the universe consisted only of atoms and void,
and that the gods, if they existed, were not concerned with human affairs. This removed the fear of divine punishment and the anxiety of an afterlife, which he saw as major sources of mental pain. By understanding the natural world through scientific inquiry, and by conquering the fear of death, which he argued was nothing to us, as when we are, death is not, and when death is, we are not. Individuals could achieve a state of tranquility. Friendship was also considered a vital component of pleasure, providing security, support, and shared joy, enhancing one's sense of well-being. The challenge for us tonight is to reconcile this ancient philosophical idea with our modern understanding of happiness and pleasure. Are we, too, often pursuing fleeting, intense pleasures that ultimately leave us feeling empty or anxious, rather than the tranquil contentment Epicurus advocated? Does a life of moderation, simple pleasures, intellectual engagement, and strong friendships truly offer the highest pleasure? For contemplation, consider what constitutes true pleasure for you. Is it the intense, momentary joy, or the deeper, lasting sense of peace and satisfaction? Epicurus's wisdom suggests that the greatest good is not found in the chase for the most sensational experiences, but in the serene art of living without disturbance, a state of profound, calm happiness.
Happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. This statement, found in Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, presents a powerful teleological view of human life, suggesting that all our endeavors, desires, and actions ultimately point towards one ultimate goal: happiness, or eudaimonia. For Aristotle, eudaimonia is not merely a transient feeling of joy or pleasure, but a state of flourishing, a life lived well, a state of being that is good in itself and pursued for its own sake, rather than as a means to an end. It is the ultimate good for which all other goods are pursued. Whether one seeks health, wealth, knowledge, or virtue, all these are ultimately desired because they are believed to contribute to this overarching state of human flourishing. Aristotle's conception of happiness is deeply intertwined with his idea of the human function, or ergon. He argued that just as the function of a knife is to cut, and the function of an eye is to see, the function of a human being is to engage in rational activity. Therefore, human flourishing, or happiness, consists in performing this function well, that is, in living a life guided by reason and virtue. It's not just about being rational, but about exercising our rational capacities virtuously. This means cultivating character virtues like courage, temperance, justice, and intellectual virtues like wisdom and understanding throughout one's life.
A happy life, in this Aristotelian sense, is an active life, a life of excellent rational and moral activity. This view contrasts with purely hedonistic accounts of happiness, which equate it with pleasure, or with purely external definitions, which might equate it with wealth, honor, or fame. Aristotle acknowledged that pleasure and honor are often associated with happiness and can contribute to it, but he argued that they are not the essence of happiness itself. A life devoted solely to pleasure, he suggested, is a life fit for cattle, not for rational beings. Similarly, honor is dependent on others, and wealth is merely a means to an end. True happiness, for Aristotle, is an internal state, achieved through the cultivation of one's character and the excellent exercise of one's unique human capacities. It is a life lived in accordance with virtue, guided by practical wisdom. The idea that happiness is the ultimate purpose of life has profound implications for how we structure our days, set our priorities, and define success. If happiness is the aim, then all other pursuits, career advancement, wealth accumulation, social status, are valuable only insofar as they contribute to this overarching goal. This invites us to critically examine our motivations and to ensure that our actions are genuinely leading us towards a state of flourishing, rather than chasing fleeting pleasures or external accolades that may ultimately prove hollow. For our contemplation tonight, reflect on what happiness or flourishing truly means to you. Is it a feeling, a state of being, or an active pursuit? And what specific virtues or rational activities do you believe are most essential for achieving this ultimate human good?
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Franklin D. Roosevelt. This iconic phrase, delivered by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in his first inaugural address on March 4, 1933, during the depths of the Great Depression, resonated deeply with a nation gripped by economic despair and widespread anxiety. Roosevelt's purpose in this speech was not just to acknowledge the dire circumstances, but to rally the American people, to instill a sense of hope, and to inspire action. He understood that the paralyzing effect of fear was one of the most significant obstacles preventing the nation from overcoming the crisis. By identifying fear as the primary enemy, he sought to reframe the challenge, empowering individuals by suggesting that the greatest impediment to progress was not the external difficulties, but their own internal response to them. Roosevelt's observation highlights a fundamental truth about human psychology. Fear, particularly when it becomes pervasive and irrational, can be far more destructive than the actual source of the threat. Unchecked fear can lead to paralysis, irrational decision-making, panic, and a breakdown of social cooperation. During the Great Depression, fear led to bank runs,
hoarding, a collapse in consumer confidence, and a general stagnation of economic activity. People were so afraid of losing what little they had that they were unwilling to spend, invest, or take risks, exacerbating the very economic problems they feared. By identifying fear itself as the primary adversary, Roosevelt was urging Americans to regain their composure, their rationality, and their collective courage. The power of this statement lies in its psychological insight and its call to agency. It suggests that while external challenges are real, our internal response, our ability to manage our fear and act with courage and resolve, is often within our control. It's a call to overcome the debilitating effects of anxiety and to face difficulties with a clear mind and a determined spirit. The ability to distinguish between rational caution and irrational panic is crucial. While a healthy sense of caution can help us navigate risks, pervasive fear can distort our perception, amplify dangers, and prevent us from taking necessary actions that could improve our situation. For our contemplation, consider the role of fear in your own life. What are the fears themselves that might be holding you back from pursuing your goals, expressing your true self, or engaging with life? Are these fears rooted in actual present dangers, or are they projections of past traumas, anxieties about the future, or societal conditioning? Roosevelt's words serve as a powerful reminder that often the greatest obstacles we face are not the external circumstances themselves, but our own internal reactions to them. By cultivating courage, practicing mindfulness, and grounding ourselves in rational thought, we can begin to master our fears rather than letting them master us, and thereby unlock our capacity to act and to build a better future.
We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Oscar Wilde. This poetic and profoundly optimistic sentiment from the Irish playwright and wit Oscar Wilde beautifully captures a key aspect of the human condition and the power of perspective. Wilde, known for his epigrams and his sharp observations on society, beauty, and morality, suggests that life inevitably presents us with difficulties, setbacks, and unpleasant realities, the gutter. However, he emphasizes that our response to these circumstances, our ability to maintain hope, aspiration, and a sense of wonder is what truly defines us. The stars represent ideals, dreams, beauty, hope, and the pursuit of higher purposes, even amidst hardship. Wilde's statement is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of perspective. It acknowledges that life is not always easy or fair. We all face challenges, disappointments, and moments of despair. These are the unavoidable gutters of existence. Yet, the crucial distinction he makes is between those who become consumed by their circumstances, focusing solely on the negative,
and those who, despite their difficult situations, maintain an inner vision of something greater, something aspirational. This capacity to look beyond immediate suffering towards a brighter future, towards beauty, or towards meaning, is presented not as a denial of reality, but as a triumph over it. This idea resonates deeply with various philosophical and psychological concepts. Stoic philosophers, for instance, emphasized that while we cannot control external events, we can control our reactions to them. By focusing on our inner state, our virtues, and our rational responses, we can find peace and purpose regardless of external circumstances. Similarly, positive psychology highlights the importance of optimism, gratitude, and hope as factors that contribute to well-being and resilience, even in the face of adversity. Wilde's quip is a succinct expression of these principles, suggesting that the difference between a life mired in misery and one of enduring spirit often lies in the choice of focus. The challenge this quote poses to us tonight is about our own perspective. When faced with difficulties, or when life feels mundane or overwhelming, where do we choose to direct our gaze? Do we become so engrossed in the immediate unpleasantness that we lose sight of our dreams, our aspirations, or the beauty that might still exist around us? Or do we cultivate the ability to lift our eyes, to find moments of wonder, to seek meaning, and to hold on to hope for a better future, even when the present feels bleak? Wilde's words are a gentle yet potent reminder that while the gutter is a reality for all, the stars are a choice for those who dare to look up. What are the stars you are looking towards tonight? And how can you nurture that vision, even if your current circumstances feel like a gutter?
The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Nelson Mandela. This profound statement, attributed to the iconic South African anti-apartheid revolutionary and former President Nelson Mandela, offers a powerful perspective on resilience, perseverance, and the true measure of human accomplishment. Mandela, who endured 27 years of imprisonment for his activism, embodied this philosophy throughout his life. His words suggest that the mark of a truly glorious life is not an absence of failure or setbacks, but rather the capacity to overcome them, to learn from them, and to emerge from them stronger and more determined. It reframes the concept of glory, moving it away from an idealized image of constant success and towards the more human and more meaningful journey of overcoming adversity. Mandela's life story is a testament to this very principle. He faced immense challenges, including political oppression, imprisonment, and the immense struggle to dismantle apartheid. There were undoubtedly moments of profound difficulty, setbacks, and perhaps even doubt.
Yet he consistently demonstrated an extraordinary ability to rise above his circumstances, to maintain his vision for a free and equal South Africa, and to inspire millions through his unwavering commitment. His eventual release from prison and his role in transitioning South Africa to a multiracial democracy exemplify the glory of rising after falling. It is in the act of getting back up, of trying again, and of continuing to strive for one's ideals in the face of opposition that true character is forged and true glory is found. This perspective is vital because it acknowledges the universality of failure. No one is immune to setbacks, mistakes, or periods of difficulty. Life inherently involves challenges, and falling, whether metaphorically or literally, is an unavoidable part of the human experience. The conventional idea of glory might focus on achievement without struggle, on success without apparent effort. However, Mandela's wisdom points to the fact that it is precisely in the struggle, in the effort to rise after falling, that the most significant personal growth and the most profound displays of strength occur. It's in the process of overcoming obstacles that we learn our true capabilities, develop resilience, and build character. For our contemplation tonight, consider the falls you have experienced in your life. These could be personal failures, professional setbacks, relationship difficulties, or moments of profound disappointment. How did you respond to them? Did you allow them to define you? Or did you find the strength within yourself to rise, to learn, and to move forward? The glory Mandela speaks of is not about avoiding the fall, but about the courage and perseverance involved in the act of rising. It is about recognizing that setbacks are not endpoints, but opportunities for growth and for demonstrating the true strength of one's spirit. What is one fall you have experienced, and what was the act of rising that followed, perhaps shaping you in ways you didn't anticipate?
The only way to do great work is to love what you do. This iconic statement, famously delivered by Apple co-founder Steve Jobs, encapsulates a core philosophy that fueled his relentless pursuit of innovation and excellence. Jobs believed that true greatness in any endeavor, whether it be technology, art, or any profession, stems from a deep-seated passion for the work itself. It's not simply about talent, intelligence, or even hard work, but about a genuine love for the process, the challenge, and the potential impact of what one is doing. This passion, according to Jobs, provides the intrinsic motivation necessary to overcome the inevitable obstacles, the long hours, and the setbacks that are inherent in creating something truly remarkable. Jobs himself was a prime example of this philosophy. His dedication to Apple and his obsession with product design and user experience were driven by a profound belief in the power of technology to change the world, and a deep personal connection to the craft of creation. He famously spoke about connecting the dots, implying that his diverse experiences, even those that seemed unrelated at the time, eventually came together to inform his vision and his work. This ability to connect seemingly disparate elements, to see possibilities where others saw none, was fueled by his passion, which allowed him to maintain focus and drive through years of development, challenges, and intense scrutiny. The underlying rationale for this statement is that when you love what you do, the effort involved feels less like a chore and more like a natural expression of your being. This intrinsic motivation leads to a higher level of engagement, creativity, and persistence. It allows individuals to push boundaries, to persevere through difficulties that might deter those who are merely motivated by external factors, like salary, status, or obligation. When work is loved, it ceases to be just a job. It becomes a calling, a form of self-expression, and a pathway to personal fulfillment. This deep engagement often translates into a higher quality of output, a willingness to go the extra mile, and an ability to innovate and solve problems in novel ways. However, this statement also prompts reflection on the practicality of finding work that one truly loves. For many, the necessity of earning a living may not always have the luxury of pursuing their absolute passions. This is where Jobs' philosophy can be interpreted more broadly. It might suggest striving to find aspects of your current work that you can love, or seeking to inject passion and purpose into even the most mundane tasks. It could also be a long-term aspiration, a call to continually seek out work that aligns with your deepest interests and values, or to cultivate passion for what you currently do. For our contemplation tonight, consider your own professional or creative endeavors. Is there a love for the process, the challenge, or the impact of what you do? If not, what small steps can you take to foster that passion? Or what larger shifts might you consider to align your work more closely with your deepest interests and the pursuit of great work?
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke. This profound and potent observation is attributed to the Anglo-Irish statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke, a keen observer of history and society, known for his conservative principles and his criticism of radical change, particularly the French Revolution. This statement, though its exact phrasing is debated and may be a distillation of his broader ideas, powerfully encapsulates his belief in the importance of civic responsibility and active participation in combating injustice and wrongdoing. It highlights that the passive stance of well-intentioned individuals can, paradoxically, create the very conditions that allow negative forces to flourish and prevail. Burke's philosophy emphasized the importance of tradition, established institutions, and the gradual evolution of society. He viewed abstract ideologies and radical attempts to dismantle existing structures as dangerous,
believing they could lead to chaos and tyranny. From this perspective, when societal norms, ethical standards, or established justice are threatened by forces he would deem evil or destructive, it is the responsibility of those who uphold goodness and order to actively resist. Doing nothing is not a neutral act. It is an acquiescence, a form of consent that allows the forces of injustice to advance unopposed. It implies that moral responsibility extends beyond refraining from evil, to actively promoting good and defending it. The statement serves as a stark reminder that the absence of opposition is, in itself, a form of enablement for wrongdoing. When faced with injustice, discrimination, or unethical behavior, silence or inaction from those who recognize the wrongfulness of such acts can be interpreted as tacit approval or indifference. This indifference can embolden those who engage in harmful activities, leading to their triumph. The good men Burke refers to are not necessarily those who are always successful, but those who recognize injustice and possess the capacity to act, even in small ways, to oppose it. Their collective inaction, born from apathy, fear, or a misguided sense of detachment, creates a vacuum that is readily filled by negative forces. For our contemplation, consider the situations in your own life or in society where injustice or harmful behavior might be present. What are the opportunities, however small, for good men or people to do something? This could range from speaking out against a prejudiced remark, to supporting ethical initiatives, to engaging in civil discourse, or to simply refusing to participate in or ignore harmful practices. Burke's words are a powerful call to civic engagement and moral courage. They remind us that maintaining a just and ethical society requires active participation, vigilance, and a willingness to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult or uncomfortable. The alternative, inaction, allows the very things we oppose to gain ground. What is one small action you can take today to ensure that good men do not allow evil to triumph through their silence?
Time is a created thing. To say, "I don't have time," is like saying, "I don't want to." Lao Tzu. This insightful aphorism, often attributed to the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, offers a radical reframe of our relationship with time. It challenges the common perception of time as an external, unyielding force that controls us, suggesting instead that our experience and perception of time are in fact a product of our own minds, our priorities, and our choices. The phrase implies that the ubiquitous lament of not having enough time is not an objective statement about a scarcity of minutes in the day, but rather a manifestation of our own internal decisions about what we choose to prioritize and what we are unwilling to make time for. Lao Tzu's philosophy, central to Taoism, emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, the natural order of the universe. This often involves a practice of wu-wei, or non-action or effortless action, which means acting in accordance with the natural flow of things without striving, forcing, or excessive effort. From this perspective, time, as a rigid linear construct that we must constantly fight against or manage, is a human invention, a product of our driven, goal-oriented consciousness. In the natural world, there is no artificial division of minutes and hours.
There is simply the unfolding of processes, the rhythm of seasons, and the natural progression of events. By adopting a more Taoist perspective, one can learn to be present, to flow with time rather than against it, and to find abundance within the present moment. The assertion that to say I don't have time is like saying I don't want to is particularly potent. It suggests that when we claim we don't have time for something, what we are often implicitly stating is that it is not a high enough priority for us, or that we are unwilling to make the necessary adjustments to our schedule or our habits to accommodate it. For example, if someone claims they don't have time to exercise, what they might truly mean is that other commitments currently take precedence, or that they are not willing to sacrifice leisure time or other activities to make exercise a priority. This doesn't necessarily imply a moral failing. It's a recognition of our own choices and priorities. This perspective is invaluable for our contemplation tonight. Consider the many things you might feel you don't have time for: personal projects, creative pursuits, spending time with loved ones, self-care, or even quiet reflection. How would your approach to these things change if you reframed them not as victims of time scarcity, but as reflections of your own desires and priorities? This is not about creating unrealistic pressure, but about fostering a greater awareness of our own agency in how we allocate our most precious resource, our attention and our energy. It invites us to consider, instead of saying, "I don't have time," what if we asked ourselves, "How much do I truly want this?" and then aligned our actions with that answer, allowing time to be created through our intention.
The only constant is change. Heraclitus. This profound observation, attributed to the ancient Greek pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus of Ephesus, who lived around the 6th century BCE, encapsulates a fundamental truth about the nature of reality and existence. Heraclitus, known for his cryptic and metaphorical style of philosophy, famously stated that everything flows, panta rei, and that one cannot step into the same river twice, for it is neither the same river, nor are we the same person. This idea of constant flux and transformation is central to his worldview. The statement, "the only constant is change," is perhaps his most enduring and widely recognizable contribution, serving as a stark reminder that nothing in the universe remains static. All things are in a perpetual state of becoming, evolving, and transforming. This continuous state of becoming is not a flaw, but the very essence of reality. Heraclitus's philosophy was deeply rooted in the observation of the natural world, particularly the dynamic processes of flux and opposition. He used metaphors like fire, which consumes and transforms, to illustrate the constant movement and change in existence. For him, change was not a sign of instability or decay, but rather the fundamental principle that drives the cosmos. Opposition, too, was essential. He believed that harmony arose from the tension between opposing forces, like day and night, war and peace, or life and death. Without these opposing forces and the change they engender, existence as we know it would cease to be. This dynamic interplay of forces and constant transformation was not merely an observation, but the very essence of reality itself, a constant dance of creation and dissolution. The implication of this perspective is far-reaching. If change is the only constant, then attempting to resist or cling to permanence is ultimately futile and a source of suffering. Our bodies are constantly changing. Our thoughts and emotions are in perpetual flux. Our relationships evolve, and the world around us is in a continuous state of transformation. To embrace this reality is to cultivate a sense of adaptability, acceptance, and presence. Instead of fearing change or resisting it, we can learn to navigate it with greater ease and wisdom. This philosophical stance encourages a mindset that is open to new experiences, adaptable to evolving circumstances, and capable of finding stability and meaning not in the absence of change, but in our ability to flow with its currents. It means recognizing that impermanence is not a threat, but the very condition for existence and growth. The challenge for us tonight is to reflect on how we engage with change in our own lives. Do we resist it, clinging to what is familiar and comfortable, even when it may no longer serve us? Or do we, like Heraclitus suggests, recognize change as the fundamental engine of existence and learn to move with its currents? Embracing this constant flux can lead to a greater sense of freedom, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for the present moment. This active participation in the flow of change allows us to find meaning not in static states, but in the dynamic processes of life itself. For our contemplation, consider areas in your life where you are resisting inevitable change, and perhaps try to shift your perspective to see the opportunity for growth and transformation that change inherently brings, recognizing that in this constant flux there is a profound and enduring truth.
We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein. This remarkably concise and insightful statement, attributed to the renowned physicist Albert Einstein, speaks to a fundamental truth about progress, innovation, and overcoming challenges. It suggests that to effectively resolve complex issues, whether they are personal dilemmas, societal problems, or scientific conundrums, a shift in perspective and methodology is often required. The thinking that led to the problem in the first place is, by its very nature, insufficient to dismantle or resolve it. This implies that a critical component of problem-solving is the ability to detach from the original framework of thought and adopt a new, often more creative or expansive approach. Einstein's own career was a testament to this principle. His revolutionary theories of relativity emerged from a willingness to question deeply ingrained assumptions about space, time, and gravity that had been accepted for centuries. The prevailing Newtonian physics, while incredibly successful, had reached its limits in explaining certain phenomena. Einstein's leap was to challenge the very foundations of that thinking, proposing a new conceptual framework that fundamentally altered our understanding of the universe. He didn't try to tweak the old models. He built entirely new ones, allowing him to solve problems that had previously seemed intractable. This willingness to step outside existing paradigms is what characterizes true innovation. The relevance of this idea extends far beyond theoretical physics. Consider a personal conflict arising from a specific communication style. If the problem stems from a tendency to be too aggressive, then continuing to communicate aggressively will likely only escalate the conflict. The solution would involve adopting a different approach, perhaps one emphasizing active listening, empathy, or a calmer tone. In business, if a company's outdated business model is causing financial difficulties, simply trying to optimize within that old model is unlikely to succeed. The solution requires reimagining the model, perhaps adopting new technologies, exploring new markets, or fundamentally changing the way the company operates. The challenge embedded in Einstein's statement is to identify when our current thinking is part of the problem, and then to cultivate the courage and creativity to adopt a different way of thinking. This often involves embracing uncertainty, being open to new ideas, and being willing to unlearn established patterns. It might mean consulting with others who have different perspectives, seeking out new information, or simply taking the time to step back and reevaluate the situation from a completely different angle. For our contemplation tonight, reflect on a problem you are currently facing. What are the underlying assumptions or the modes of thinking that have been involved in creating this problem? And what kind of different thinking might be necessary to begin to solve it?
The universe is not hostile, nor is it friendly. It is indifferent. This statement offers a sobering yet potentially liberating perspective on our place in the cosmos. It challenges anthropocentric views that project human emotions and intentions onto the vast, impersonal forces of the universe. Whether attributed to scientists, philosophers, or simply as a piece of collected wisdom, the core idea suggests that the universe operates according to its own inherent laws and principles, quite apart from human desires, hopes, or fears. It neither favors nor opposes us. It simply is. This indifference, while it can initially feel disheartening or even frightening, can also be a profound source of clarity and empowerment. The universe, as understood through science, is a realm of immense scale, governed by physical laws like gravity, electromagnetism, and thermodynamics. These laws operate impersonally. A star explodes, a planet orbits, a black hole consumes matter. These events are not driven by malice or by beneficence, but by the fundamental properties of matter and energy interacting according to natural principles. There is no cosmic plan that specifically includes or excludes humanity, no grand intention behind our existence or our suffering. From this standpoint, the universe is neither a benevolent protector nor a malevolent adversary. It is a complex, indifferent system within which our lives unfold.
This philosophical stance contrasts with many religious or spiritual beliefs that posit a universe imbued with purpose, divine intention, or a personal deity who cares for humanity. While such beliefs can offer comfort and meaning, the indifferent universe perspective suggests that the meaning and purpose in our lives must be generated from within, by us. We are not the chosen recipients of cosmic favor or the targets of cosmic animosity. This shifts the locus of meaning-making entirely onto the human experience. Our hopes, our dreams, our struggles, and our joys are significant because we make them significant. The friendliness or hostility we perceive in the universe is often a projection of our own internal states, or our attempts to find meaning in events. When good things happen, we might feel the universe is smiling upon us. When bad things occur, we might feel it is punishing us. The indifferent universe view encourages us to shed these projections and to recognize that events are simply events, governed by natural processes. This can be liberating because it removes the burden of seeking cosmic validation or fearing cosmic retribution. It empowers us to take responsibility for creating our own meaning, defining our own values, and finding purpose within our lives not as a dictated destiny, but as a personal creation. For our contemplation, consider the implications of this indifference. Does it diminish the importance of your life, or does it, paradoxically, make your own capacity for creating meaning and experiencing joy even more profound?
The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. Saint Augustine. This beautiful metaphor, attributed to Saint Augustine of Hippo, the influential theologian and philosopher of the late Roman period, eloquently captures the enriching and transformative power of experiencing different cultures, places, and perspectives through travel. Augustine, who lived from 354 to 430 CE, was himself a traveler, having moved from North Africa to Italy and back. His statement suggests that the vast tapestry of human experience, knowledge, and understanding is like a grand book, and that to remain in one place, experiencing only one way of life, is to remain confined to a single chapter, a mere single page of its immense content. The world as a book metaphor implies that each place, each culture, each journey offers a unique narrative, a distinct set of insights, and a different way of understanding existence. When we travel, we are not just visiting new locations. We are, in essence, turning the pages of this cosmic book, encountering new characters, learning about different histories, and confronting diverse philosophies and ways of life. This exposure broadens our horizons,
challenges our preconceptions and deepens our understanding of the vast diversity of human experience and the complexities of the world. It allows us to see beyond our own limited perspective and to appreciate the myriad ways in which people live, think, and find meaning. To read only one page means to remain confined by one's immediate environment, one's own culture, and one's ingrained habits and beliefs. While there is value in understanding one's own context deeply, limiting oneself solely to this experience, missing out on the richness and depth that can be gained from encountering the unfamiliar. Travel, in this sense, is an act of intellectual and emotional expansion. It exposes us to different possibilities, teaches us about the relativity of our own customs, and often fosters empathy and a greater appreciation for humanity in its entirety. It can challenge our assumptions about what is normal or right, and open us up to new ideas and ways of being. For our contemplation tonight, consider this metaphor in relation to your own experiences. Have you had opportunities to travel and read more pages of this world's book? What new perspectives did you gain? If not, or if travel has been limited, how might you seek to read more pages in other ways? This could involve engaging with people from different backgrounds in your own community, exploring diverse forms of art and literature, learning a new language, or even engaging in deep, thoughtful inquiry about different cultures and histories. The world is indeed a vast and intricate book, and the wisdom it holds is immense. What page of this book are you currently on, and what new chapters might you aspire to explore?
The true voyager is not seeking the destination, but the journey. This sentiment, often attributed to the French writer, poet, and aviator Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of The Little Prince, elegantly captures a profound shift in perspective regarding our goals and our experience of life. In a culture often focused on achievement, arrival, and reaching specific milestones, the destination, this quote reminds us that the richness, learning, and personal growth often lie not in the end point itself, but in the process of getting there. The true essence of the journey, according to this view, is in the experiences, the lessons learned, the challenges overcome, in the transformations that occur along the way. Saint-Exupéry's own life as a pilot and writer was marked by both remarkable voyages and profound reflections on the human condition. His literary works often explore themes of innocence, wonder, connection, and the search for meaning, all viewed through the lens of his personal journeys. This quote reflects a philosophy that values presence, exploration, and the unfolding of experience over the mere attainment of a final goal. It's about appreciating the present moment and the unfolding narrative of one's life. The idea of prioritizing the journey over the destination can be liberating. When we become overly fixated on reaching a particular goal, a promotion, a certain amount of wealth, a specific relationship status, we risk missing the valuable lessons, the unexpected opportunities, and the sheer beauty that lies in the present process. This focus on the destination can lead to anxiety, impatience, and a feeling of constant dissatisfaction, as we are always looking ahead, never fully present in where we are. Conversely, by embracing the journey, we cultivate a greater appreciation for our current circumstances, find joy in the process of learning and growth, and become more resilient when faced with the inevitable detours and obstacles that life presents. This philosophy is also deeply connected to the concept of mindfulness and presence. When we are truly engaged in the journey, we are more attuned to our surroundings, our feelings, and the lessons that each experience offers. It encourages a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation rather than a rigid adherence to a predetermined outcome. For our contemplation tonight, consider your own life's voyages. What are the destinations you are aiming for? And more importantly, how are you experiencing the journey itself? Are you present to the moments, the people, and the lessons along the way? Or are you so focused on the eventual arrival that you might be missing the very essence of what it means to truly live and to voyage through life?
The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates. We return to this foundational Socratic statement, this time to explore its broader implications beyond the initial definition and its direct challenge to personal introspection. Socrates' conviction that an unexamined life lacks true value extends beyond mere self-awareness to encompass a deeper engagement with ethical principles, societal structures, and the very nature of a good life. It's not just about understanding oneself in a vacuum, but about understanding oneself in relation to others, to the community, and to the pursuit of justice and virtue. This re-examination allows us to appreciate the multifaceted nature of Socrates' philosophy and its enduring relevance to our collective human experience. Socrates' relentless questioning, famously demonstrated in Plato's dialogues, was not solely directed at individuals in private conversation, but was also a public and political act. He questioned the prevailing political assumptions, the ethical standards of the Athenian society, and the wisdom of its leaders. He believed that a polis, city-state, and its citizens had a moral obligation to critically examine their laws, their customs, and their collective pursuit of justice. An unexamined life for a society, just as for an individual, meant living according to unthinking tradition, arbitrary authority, or unaddressed injustices, thereby failing to live up to its potential for moral and civic excellence. His focus on virtue, arete, was inextricably linked to knowledge. He argued that virtue is knowledge, and that wrongdoing stems from ignorance. Therefore, to live a virtuous life is to cultivate knowledge, to understand what is truly good, and to act in accordance with that understanding. This requires constant examination, not only of one's own character, but also of the moral principles that should guide collective action. When Socrates was put on trial, his defense was essentially a defense of his life's work, the ceaseless examination of life, and the pursuit of wisdom for the betterment of himself and his fellow Athenians. His ultimate condemnation and acceptance of death were, in his view, a testament to his unwavering commitment to the principle that living by reason and principle is more valuable than life itself, especially when life is lived without such examination.
The broader context of the unexamined life thus encompasses our responsibilities as citizens and as members of a shared human community. It urges us to question not only our personal motivations, but also the systems, institutions, and societal narratives that shape our lives. Are our societal structures just? Are our laws equitable? Are our collective aspirations truly conducive to human flourishing for all? To neglect these questions is to live a life both individually and collectively that falls short of its potential. For our contemplation tonight, consider not only your personal life, but also your role within your community and society. What collective assumptions or injustices might warrant examination? How can you contribute to a more examined and therefore more meaningful shared existence?
What is not brought into consciousness will from of old appear to us as fate. Carl Jung. This profound statement from the Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Carl Jung, a pioneer in analytical psychology, speaks to the powerful role of our unconscious mind and the nature of our perception. Jung believed that many of our patterns of behavior, our recurring emotional responses, and our life's trajectory are heavily influenced by forces within our psyche that we are not consciously aware of. These unconscious patterns, when left unexamined, can seem like external destiny or fate, inevitable circumstances that happen to us, rather than being, at least in part, a manifestation of our own inner landscape. Jung's work on archetypes, the collective unconscious, and the process of individuation highlights the importance of integrating unconscious material into conscious awareness. He proposed that individuals are often driven by unconscious complexes, collections of emotionally charged thoughts, memories, and perceptions that are organized around a common theme. These complexes can exert a powerful influence on our behavior, our relationships, and our life choices, often without our direct knowledge. For example, an unresolved childhood trauma or an unacknowledged fear could manifest in adult relationships as a pattern of sabotage or an inability to trust. These patterns, when not consciously understood, can feel like an inescapable destiny, a recurring misfortune that seems to befall us regardless of our efforts. The statement suggests that by bringing these unconscious elements into consciousness through introspection, therapy, dream analysis, or creative expression, we can begin to understand their origins and their influence. Once understood, these patterns are no longer perceived as an uncontrollable external fate, but as aspects of ourselves that can be understood, integrated, and transformed. This process of making conscious is central to individuation, Jung's term for the lifelong psychological process of becoming an integrated, whole individual. It's about acknowledging and harmonizing the different parts of our psyche, including those that reside in the unconscious. The implication is that much of what we attribute to fate or bad luck might actually be the external manifestation of internal, unexamined psychological dynamics.
By engaging in self-reflection and exploring our inner world, we gain agency over our lives. We begin to see how our own unconscious patterns might be contributing to the circumstances we perceive as fated. For our contemplation tonight, consider the recurring patterns or challenges in your life. Do they ever feel like an inescapable destiny? Could there be unconscious factors at play, influencing your perceptions or driving your actions in ways you haven't yet fully grasped? The journey of bringing the unconscious into consciousness is one of profound empowerment, transforming perceived fate into a landscape of personal growth and conscious choice.
The universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. J.B.S. Haldane. This striking observation by the British biologist and geneticist J.B.S. Haldane encapsulates a fundamental truth about scientific discovery and the ever-expanding frontiers of human knowledge. Haldane, a brilliant and often provocative thinker, understood that our capacity for imagination, while vast, is still limited by our current understanding and our ingrained conceptual frameworks. As science progresses, it consistently reveals phenomena and realities that are far more bizarre, counterintuitive, and complex than anything we could have previously conceived. The universe in its true nature constantly outstrips our ability to fully comprehend it, even when we are actively trying to imagine its strangeness. Our mental models, no matter how sophisticated, struggle to keep pace with the sheer audacity of cosmic reality. Haldane's statement is particularly relevant in fields like quantum physics and cosmology. Quantum mechanics, for instance, describes a subatomic world where particles can exist in multiple states or locations simultaneously, where causality can appear to be reversed, and where the act of observation seems to influence reality itself. These concepts are so alien to our everyday macroscopic experience that they defy our common-sense imagination and our intuitive grasp of how things should work. Similarly, cosmology grapples with concepts like dark matter and dark energy, which make up the vast majority of the universe's mass energy content, but remain invisible and poorly understood, existing in ways that we can only infer from their gravitational effects. The sheer scale of the universe, the theoretical possibility of multiverses with entirely different physical laws, and the extreme conditions found within black holes all push the boundaries of what we can readily imagine or even formulate hypotheses about. These are not just abstract intellectual puzzles. They are descriptions of the actual fabric of existence that our best scientific instruments and theories are uncovering. This quote serves as a powerful antidote to intellectual arrogance, or the belief that we have, or soon will have, a complete understanding of reality. It fosters a sense of awe, wonder, and a healthy dose of epistemic humility. It reminds us that there is always more to discover, and that our current models of the universe, however advanced, are likely incomplete and provisional. The history of science is replete with examples where discoveries overturned established paradigms and revealed a reality far stranger than anyone had imagined. Think of the shift from a geocentric to a heliocentric model of the solar system, or the advent of relativity and quantum mechanics, which fundamentally altered our perception of space, time, and matter. Each revolution in science has shown us that what we thought was the edge of understanding was merely a stepping stone to even more perplexing and magnificent realities. For our contemplation tonight,
Consider this idea in relation to your own understanding of the world. Are there areas in your life, in your personal philosophy, or in your knowledge of the universe where your understanding might feel complete? Haldane's words encourage us to embrace the mystery, to acknowledge the limits of our comprehension, and to remain open to the possibility that reality is far more peculiar and wondrous than our imaginations can currently hold. It's an invitation to cultivate relentless curiosity, to marvel at the unknown, and to recognize that the greatest discoveries and the deepest truths often lie in the territories far beyond our wildest imaginings. The universe is a boundless enigma, and our journey of discovery is only just beginning, constantly revealing new layers of strangeness that exceed our capacity to predict or even to fully conceptualize, making the pursuit of knowledge an endless and exhilarating adventure.
It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent that survive. It is the ones most responsive to change. Charles Darwin, often paraphrased. This widely cited and insightful summary of evolutionary principle, often attributed to Charles Darwin himself, though the precise wording is a paraphrase and simplification of his more complex ideas, highlights a critical aspect of adaptation and survival in the natural world. While Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection famously emphasizes the survival of the fittest, the concept of fittest is not necessarily about brute strength or superior intelligence. Instead, it refers to the organisms best equipped to survive and reproduce in their specific environment. This often means being the most adaptable, the most flexible, and the most responsive to the changing conditions of their habitat. Darwin's observations, particularly during his voyage on the HMS Beagle, led him to understand that species do not evolve in a vacuum. They are in a constant interplay with their environment. When the environment changes, due to climate shifts, geological events, or the introduction of new species, those organisms whose traits allow them to better cope with these new conditions are more likely to survive and pass on those advantageous traits to their offspring. This is the essence of natural selection. Nature selects for traits that enhance survival and reproduction in a given context. Therefore, strength and intelligence can be advantageous traits, but they are only beneficial if they are relevant to the environmental pressures at hand. A creature might be incredibly strong, but unable to survive if its food source disappears, or highly intelligent, but unable to adapt to a sudden disease outbreak. Responsiveness to change in this context encompasses a range of capabilities. It might mean having a varied diet, a flexible behavior pattern, a rapid reproductive cycle, or the ability to tolerate a wider range of temperatures or environmental conditions. It's about plasticity, the capacity to adjust and modify one's form, function, or behavior in response to external stimuli. This principle applies not only to biological evolution, but also metaphorically to human societies, businesses, and even individual development.
In a rapidly changing world, the ability to learn, adapt, and pivot is often more crucial for long-term success and survival than sheer power or accumulated knowledge. This idea encourages us to consider the importance of flexibility and adaptation in our own lives. In a world that is constantly evolving, whether technologically, socially, or economically, the ability to learn new skills, to embrace new ideas, and to adjust our strategies when circumstances change is paramount. Sticking rigidly to old ways of thinking or operating, even if they were once successful, can lead to obsolescence. For our contemplation tonight, reflect on how responsive you are to change in your own life. Are you open to new experiences and challenges, or do you tend to resist significant shifts? How can cultivating greater adaptation enhance your ability to not just survive, but to thrive in an ever-changing world?
There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. This profound and often quoted line comes from Shakespeare's Hamlet, spoken by the melancholic prince to his loyal friend Horatio. Hamlet, having just encountered the ghost of his father, is grappling with existential questions and the unsettling nature of reality, which has been shaken by supernatural events and profound moral revelations. Horatio, representing a more rational and empirical viewpoint, is struggling to comprehend the spectral visitation. Hamlet's statement is a gentle rebuke, suggesting that Horatio's current understanding, his philosophy, is too limited to encompass the vastness and the strangeness of the true nature of existence. It's a reminder that human knowledge and imagination, while potent, have boundaries, and that reality often extends far beyond what we can currently conceive. The power of this quote lies in its humble acknowledgement of the limits of human understanding. It speaks to the vastness of the unknown, the mysteries that lie beyond our current scientific, philosophical, and imaginative capabilities. In Hamlet's era, this might have referred to the supernatural or the divine. In our modern context, it resonates with scientific frontiers like quantum mechanics, cosmology, and neuroscience, which continuously reveal phenomena that challenge our intuitive grasp of reality. The universe, as we learn more about it, continues to present phenomena that are stranger and more complex than our most ambitious imaginings. Our philosophy, our current conceptual framework, is always playing catch-up with the unfolding reality. This sentiment encourages a spirit of intellectual curiosity and humility. It cautions against dogmatism or the belief that we have already discovered all there is to know. Instead, it invites us to remain open to new possibilities, to embrace the mystery, and to acknowledge that there may be truths and phenomena that lie entirely outside our conscious awareness or our philosophical frameworks. It's a call to wonder, to explore, and to recognize that the universe is a place of perpetual surprise,
constantly pushing the boundaries of what we can even conceive. For our contemplation tonight, consider areas where your own understanding might feel complete. Are there beliefs, assumptions, or explanations that you hold with absolute certainty? Shakespeare's words encourages us to hold those certainties with a degree of provisionality, to acknowledge that there might be dimensions of reality or deeper truths that have not yet entered our conscious awareness or our philosophical frameworks. It's a reminder that the most profound discoveries often come when we least expect them, and when we approach the world with a sense of awe rather than a sense of having already arrived at all answers. What things in heaven and earth might be waiting to be discovered simply because they are beyond our current ability to dream of?
The mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Soren Kierkegaard. This insightful quote from the Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, a foundational figure in existentialism, offers a profound perspective on how we should approach the fundamental questions of existence. Kierkegaard argued that the deepest aspects of life, consciousness, freedom, faith, and the meaning of existence, are not like mathematical equations or scientific puzzles that can be definitively solved through logic or empirical evidence alone. Instead, he believed these are experiential realities, profound mysteries that are to be lived, felt, and engaged with, rather than merely analyzed or intellectualized. The very act of trying to solve life's mysteries as if they were problems can inadvertently distance us from their direct experience and the personal truths they hold. Kierkegaard's philosophy often emphasized subjectivity, the individual's passionate engagement with existence, and the significance of personal choice, particularly in matters of faith and selfhood. He critiqued abstract philosophical systems that he felt detached individuals from their concrete lived realities. For him, the problem of life was too often posed in intellectual terms, leading people to seek external answers or grand theories that might provide a sense of certainty, but fail to address the lived existential reality of being human. The mystery, conversely, is that which is vast, perhaps unknowable in its totality, and deeply personal. It is encountered not in textbooks, but in moments of reflection, in relationships, in moments of joy and sorrow, and in the act of living itself. This perspective encourages a shift from an analytical mindset to an experiential one. Instead of dissecting life's questions like a scientist or a mathematician, Kierkegaard suggests we should approach them with the receptivity and immersion of an artist or a poet. It implies that the answers we seek are not external propositions to be discovered, but internal states to be realized through living,
through commitment, and through confronting the existential dilemmas that are inherent to being human. The experience of life's mystery is found in embracing the uncertainty, in making choices despite not knowing all the outcomes, and in finding meaning through our engagement with the world, rather than through a purely rational solution. For our contemplation tonight, consider the existential questions that occupy your mind. Do you find yourself trying to solve them, seeking definitive answers that might elude logical explanation? Or are you able to embrace them as ongoing mysteries, to be lived and experienced? Kierkegaard invites us to be present to the profound, often unanswerable aspects of our existence, to engage with them through our feelings, our actions, and our faith, and to find meaning not in the resolution of the mystery, but in the rich, complex experience of living it. What are the core mysteries of life for you, and how might you shift from trying to solve them to truly experiencing them?
To be or not to be? That is the question. William Shakespeare. This is perhaps the most famous soliloquy in all of literature, spoken by Prince Hamlet in Shakespeare's play of the same name. It is an iconic exploration of existential contemplation, delving into the profound dilemma of life versus death, existence versus oblivion, and suffering versus the unknown. Hamlet, overwhelmed by grief, betrayal, and the weight of his task to avenge his father, is contemplating suicide as a potential escape from his profound existential torment. The soliloquy is a raw and unflinching examination of the human condition, grappling with the value of life when it is filled with suffering, and the terrifying uncertainty of what lies beyond death. The core of the question, to be or not to be, is a stark confrontation with the fundamental choice between continuing to endure the pains and afflictions of life, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to end one's existence and face the unknown of death, to die, to sleep. Hamlet meticulously weighs the pros and cons of each path. He acknowledges that life, despite its hardships, offers the certainty of continuing existence, of experiencing the world and potentially finding a way out of his predicament. Death, on the other hand, is the undiscovered country, a realm from which no traveler returns, and whose nature remains a source of dread and speculation. This fear of the unknown is what, according to Hamlet, makes people endure suffering rather than seek the oblivion of death. Hamlet's contemplation extends to the nature of consciousness and the afterlife. He considers whether death brings a peaceful sleep or a continuation of consciousness, possibly in a different form or state. The fear of this unknown afterlife, of what dreams or torments might await in that eternal sleep, is what paralyzes him and, he suggests, paralyzes humanity.
This fear of the unknown is a powerful force that can make people cling to even the most miserable existence, rather than risk the potential horrors of death. It's a fundamental aspect of the human psyche that we often fear what we cannot understand or control. For our contemplation tonight, Hamlet's dilemma, though steeped in the dramatic context of the play, touches upon universal existential anxieties. It prompts us to reflect on the value we place on life, the nature of suffering, and our relationship with the concept of mortality. When faced with significant hardship, what thoughts arise? How do we reconcile the desire for relief with the fundamental human instinct for survival and the inherent fear of the unknown? Hamlet's profound meditation serves as a reminder of the complex and often agonizing considerations that accompany the human experience of consciousness, life, and death. What does it truly mean for you, in your own terms, to be?
The only true wisdom is in knowing you nothing. Socrates. Revisiting Socrates' foundational assertion, we now explore its dimension of acceptance. Not merely the intellectual recognition of ignorance, but the deeper, more profound embrace of that unknowing. When we revisit the idea that true wisdom lies in understanding our own lack of knowledge, we can move beyond the initial paradox to consider how this acceptance can lead to a more peaceful, open, and adaptable way of being in the world. It's about finding wisdom not in the possession of answers, but in the humble posture of perpetual inquiry, coupled with a peaceful acceptance of life's inherent mysteries. Socrates' famous declaration, "I know that I know nothing," was not a statement of despair or a surrender to ignorance. Instead, it was the catalyst for his lifelong philosophical pursuit. By acknowledging his ignorance, he was freed from the constraints of false certainty and dogmatism. This initial recognition opens the door to genuine learning, critical thinking, and the humility that allows for intellectual and personal growth. However, simply knowing intellectually that you know nothing can be unsettling. The deeper wisdom lies in accepting this state not as a deficiency, but as the natural and even advantageous condition for a life of continuous exploration and discovery. Accepting our limitations doesn't mean ceasing to learn or to seek understanding. Rather, it means approaching learning with an attitude of openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be surprised. It implies recognizing that the universe is vast and complex, and that our individual capacity to grasp its entirety is inherently limited. When we accept this, we are less likely to become frustrated by unanswered questions or by the inevitability of change and uncertainty in our lives. Instead, we can find a sense of peace in the ongoing process and a genuine appreciation for the wisdom that emerges from embracing the unknown. This acceptance also fosters resilience. If our sense of self-worth is tied to knowing all the answers or being right all the time, then any challenge to our knowledge or any encounter with a new situation we don't understand can be destabilizing. However, if we have accepted our fundamental unknowing, then encountering new information or facing unfamiliar circumstances becomes less of a threat and more of an opportunity. It's a chance to learn, to grow, and to expand our understanding without the ego being threatened. For our contemplation tonight, consider areas where you might resist the idea of not knowing. How might embracing that unknowing, not as a failure, but as a foundational state for wisdom, lead to a greater sense of peace and curiosity in your life? It's in this humble acceptance that true, enduring wisdom can begin to blossom.
In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Albert Einstein. This quote, often attributed to Albert Einstein, encapsulates a profound optimism and a forward-thinking perspective on challenges. It suggests that even in the most arduous circumstances, hidden within the difficulties themselves are potentials for growth, innovation, and positive transformation. Einstein, who faced his share of intellectual and personal adversities, understood that breakthrough moments often emerge not from smooth sailing, but from the friction and struggle that arise when established systems or understandings are confronted with unexpected obstacles. The very presence of a problem, a difficulty, or a crisis can be the catalyst that forces us to think differently, to adapt, and to discover new solutions or pathways. The essence of this idea lies in reframing challenges. Instead of viewing difficulties as insurmountable roadblocks, Einstein's perspective encourages us to see them as catalysts for change and innovation. When faced with a complex problem, traditional methods may prove insufficient, forcing us to seek novel approaches, to develop new skills, or to reconsider our fundamental assumptions. This process of problem-solving, though often arduous, can lead to significant personal growth, the development of resilience, and the discovery of capabilities we never knew we possessed. The struggle itself can be the crucible in which stronger, more adaptable, and more insightful versions of ourselves are forged. Consider the history of scientific or technological advancement. Many of the greatest breakthroughs were born out of necessity, driven by the need to overcome a particular difficulty. Penicillin, for instance, was discovered by accident when Alexander Fleming noticed that mold had contaminated his petri dishes, an unintended consequence that became a medical revolution. Innovations in computing and space exploration were spurred by immense technical challenges and the ambition to achieve seemingly impossible goals. These opportunities did not arise from comfortable, problem-free environments, but from the very heart of difficulty. For our contemplation tonight, reflect on a current difficulty you are facing. Can you shift your perspective to look for the opportunity within it?
What new skills might you need to develop to overcome this challenge? What new insights might arise from your struggle? What creative solutions might you discover by being forced to think outside your usual patterns? Einstein's wisdom reminds us that the path to progress is often paved with challenges, and that by approaching these difficulties with a mindset of opportunity, we can unlock our potential for growth and discover unforeseen possibilities. The struggle itself, when met with a spirit of inquiry and determination, can lead to the most valuable discoveries.
If you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things. Albert Einstein. This quote from Albert Einstein offers a profound insight into the source of lasting happiness and fulfillment, suggesting that true contentment arises not from external attachments to people or possessions, but from the pursuit of meaningful goals. In a world that often equates happiness with acquiring material wealth, achieving social status, or being in specific relationships, Einstein's perspective shifts the focus to an internal, purpose-driven orientation. It implies that by anchoring our sense of happiness to aspirations and objectives that are intrinsically meaningful to us, we can build a more stable and enduring foundation for well-being, independent of the fluctuating nature of external circumstances. The distinction between tying happiness to people or things and tying it to a goal is significant. While relationships and possessions can bring joy, pleasure, and comfort, they are inherently external and subject to change. People can leave, relationships can end, and material possessions can be lost or broken. If our happiness is solely dependent on these external factors, our emotional state becomes vulnerable to the whims of fortune. In contrast, a goal, particularly a meaningful and intrinsically motivated one, provides an internal compass. The pursuit of a goal offers a sense of purpose, direction, and continuous engagement. The journey towards achieving it can be filled with learning, growth, and a deep sense of satisfaction, regardless of the ultimate outcome. Einstein's own life exemplified this principle. His relentless pursuit of scientific understanding, his groundbreaking theories, and his dedication to unraveling the mysteries of the universe were not driven by a desire for fame or wealth, but by a deep intellectual curiosity and a passion for discovery. His goals were not tied to the approval of others or the accumulation of possessions, but to the expansion of human knowledge and the understanding of the cosmos. This intrinsic motivation provided him with a profound sense of purpose that transcended personal attachments or material concerns. The implication for our own lives is to identify those overarching goals or purposes that truly resonate with our deepest values and aspirations. These goals might be related to personal growth, contributing to society, mastering a skill, or exploring a passion. By dedicating ourselves to such pursuits, we create a more robust framework for happiness, one that is less susceptible to the inevitable ups and downs of life. It's about finding a sense of meaning and engagement that comes from striving for something larger than oneself, and finding fulfillment in the process of striving. For our contemplation tonight, consider your own life. What are the true goals that, if pursued with dedication, would lead you towards a more lasting and profound sense of happiness, independent of external validation or possessions. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. This evocative statement comes from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, in his personal philosophical writings known as Meditations. It beautifully illustrates a core tenet of Stoicism, the profound impact of our internal thoughts and judgments on our character, our emotional state, and our overall experience of life. Aurelius believed that while we cannot control external events, we have absolute control over our inner world, our thoughts, our perceptions, and our responses. The soul, in this context, refers to our inner essence, our mind, our consciousness, and our character. The color it takes on is determined by the quality and nature of our thoughts. The Stoic philosophy emphasizes that it is not external events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments and interpretations of those events. If we think of a situation as a catastrophe, it will feel like one, regardless of its objective reality. If we perceive an obstacle as insurmountable, it will likely become so for us. Conversely, if we can frame challenges as opportunities for growth, or if we can accept what is beyond our control with equanimity, then our inner state remains stable, even amidst external turmoil. Marcus Aurelius, in his daily practice of Stoicism, constantly reminded himself to examine his thoughts, to detach from negative emotions, and to focus on what was within his power, his own reasoned responses and virtuous intentions. The metaphor of dying is powerful. It suggests that thoughts are not merely fleeting mental events, but have a transformative, coloring effect on our entire being. Persistent negative thoughts, fear, anger, resentment, anxiety, can gradually stain our inner world, leading to a disposition that is perpetually gloomy, fearful, or agitated. On the other hand, thoughts of gratitude, resilience, compassion, and equanimity can imbue our inner life with a sense of peace, clarity, and strength. Our internal landscape, therefore, is not a fixed entity, but is continuously shaped and reshaped by the quality of our thinking. This idea has profound implications for self-development and emotional well-being. It empowers us by highlighting that we are not passive victims of our thoughts or emotions, but active participants in shaping our inner reality. By consciously choosing to focus on constructive, positive, and rational thoughts, we can gradually transform our inner disposition, leading to a more peaceful and fulfilling life. For our contemplation tonight, consider the predominant colors of your thoughts. What is the prevailing hue of your inner world? Are your thoughts predominantly casting shadows of negativity, or illuminating the landscape with positivity and reason? The power to change that color, as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, lies in the deliberate cultivation of our thoughts. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. Socrates. We conclude this journey through philosophical reflections by returning to a foundational principle articulated by Socrates, the vital importance of clarity in defining terms. While we began with this idea, let us revisit it now, not just as an intellectual exercise, but as a final anchor for understanding. Socrates understood that true wisdom is not merely about accumulating knowledge, but about possessing clear and accurate understanding, and that this clarity begins with the precise definition of the concepts we engage with. This final contemplation underscores how the rigor of precise language is the bedrock upon which all deeper understanding is built. Throughout our exploration, we have encountered concepts such as reality, happiness, fear, time, and virtue. Each of these terms, while seemingly familiar, can hold vastly different meanings for different individuals or even within different philosophical traditions. Socrates' insistence on defining terms was his primary tool for navigating the complexities of human thought and ethics. He recognized that without a shared, clear understanding of fundamental concepts, discourse would inevitably lead to confusion, disagreement, and flawed reasoning. If we speak of justice without defining what it means, or of courage without a clear grasp of its essence, our actions and judgments based on these terms can be misguided. The process of defining terms is an act of intellectual discipline. It requires us to pause, to reflect, and to scrutinize our assumptions. It involves asking critical questions. What are the essential characteristics of this concept? What distinguishes it from other related concepts? What are its implications and consequences? This is not about creating rigid, inflexible definitions, but about establishing a working clarity that allows for meaningful engagement. It's about building a solid foundation before constructing elaborate theories or making significant life decisions. Without this clarity, we are like architects trying to build a skyscraper on shifting sand. This focus on defining terms also highlights the iterative nature of learning. As we encounter new information or new perspectives, our understanding of terms can evolve. Wisdom, therefore, is not about reaching a static state of knowing, but about engaging in a continuous process of refining our understanding through clear definitions and critical examination. It's about fostering a lifelong habit of intellectual honesty and precision. For our final contemplation of this session, consider the impact of clarity in your own life. How has a lack of clear definitions in communication, in your own thoughts, or in societal discourse led to confusion or misunderstanding? And how can the practice of carefully defining terms in your personal reflections and in your interactions serve as a constant beacon for deeper wisdom and more meaningful understanding? The journey of wisdom begins and is continually sustained by the clarity of our definitions.